Hello. It's kind of late at night. I got back from work and then I got back from the grocery store. But I have to make dinner. You know, girls gotta eat. So I'm gonna make dinner and then we'll chat. Today we're gonna talk about getting over relapses. Getting through relapses, what happens when you relapse, etc., etc. I haven't written this video out, and at this point I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm just gonna talk to you guys. So after I make dinner, I'm gonna do just that. Okay, bye. Come on. Oh, this little one missed me so much today. And now he's like, I missed you, but I forget why, because you never leave me alone. They're all so big. Oh my God. Literally, look at the potatoes that I bought. They're all so fucking huge. Mushing up chickpeas and avocados right now. So, relapses. Man, I hate when I don't write out myself a script. Why do I do this to myself? Not like a script, but at least like some fucking notes. Let's begin with what a relapse is and why it's super fucking common and you shouldn't feel bad if it happens to you or you find yourself slipping into one. A relapse is basically after you've decided to commit to full recovery and you're on your way. Typically what happens is the eating disorder voices take over whether you're aware of it or not, and you either go into a full intentional relapse where you start restricting intentionally or exercising again or eating less or giving into the bad thoughts because the guilt that your eating disorder is making you feel, the gluttony that comes with recovery, which is not a valid feeling but it's something that definitely comes up. I mean, it's a feeling that happens, but it's not rooted in reality. It's just something your eating disorder is convincing you of. But anyway, these thoughts can be really fucking hard to deal with, and they really make you question if recovery is actually worth it, if recovery is real, if it's just some bullshit I'm peddling or other people who are recovered are peddling, if maybe you're a special circumstance and for some reason you need to do recovery a little bit more differently, less food, more exercise, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, all of these things are your eating disorder's attempt at self-preservation. Through the process of recovery, you are getting rid of your eating disorder and it's a mental illness and it will fight to stay alive. So, it's not your fault if a relapse happens or if you have relapse urges. I think everybody does. I certainly did. Recovery was not like a track for me. As you guys know through my recovery journals, I was up, I was down, I was in quasi-recovery, I was not listening to my therapist, so then I was in full recovery, and it was hard, the feelings were hard, I battled through it, and eventually, you know, I did make it to the end, but it's not linear, and don't feel bad if it isn't linear for you either. This is a journey. They call it a journey for a reason. You're gonna have some side quests. I'm making some really weird Dungeons and Dragons references here. But you're gonna have some side quests going with it, and those side quests will be relapses. So, is this like a really gross sound that I have in the background? I'll stop doing it. Do you guys like this dress? My grandma made it for me. Okay, so anyway, that's kind of that's what a relapse is. I'm sure you guys already knew that. So, let's talk about what happens when you find yourself in a relapse. The first step is acknowledging it, obviously. You can't do anything about it until you've acknowledged that it's happened. And doing so does not make you a failure. It does not mean that recovery is no longer possible. None of those things happen. Once you acknowledge it, the important thing to remember is that this is not the end. You're just on one of your little side quests. Quickly get back to the main quest. I think that the most important part of all of this, oh, my boyfriend's about to walk in the door, is recognizing why it happened. so that we can avoid that trigger. Hey baby.
Hello.
I'm filming a video.
Oh, the cat ran away.
Well, can you go get him?
I hope that your viewers don't like Beethoven.
They love Beethoven.
They will never see him again.
Go get him.
He's gone.
Oh.
It's okay. I found a new cat.
No, this is our cat.
No, this is Schubert.
Why?
It's the next Beethoven. He was called Beethoven's 10.
Thanks so much for your promo in this video. I loved it.
No,
oh my god, you're my favorite. Okay, bye.
Hi.
No. Recognizing why you relapsed is like the most important part in not only getting back into recovery, but from preventing a relapse from happening in the future. Like, if the reason you relapsed was because you felt like you were eating too much food and your eating disorder was convincing you that you were like a glutton or whatever, which we all know in reality is not true, but can seem very convincing, you know, when you're super vulnerable and recovering, then you just need to kind of pinpoint whatever specific issue it was. Were you body checking too much? Were you weighing yourself? Were you staring at yourself in a distorted version of your reflection in the mirror? Were you feeling like you were eating too much? Were you literally so addicted to exercise that you couldn't handle the, you know, halting in all movement? Whatever the particular issue for you was it something deeper, more emotional, more linked to something traumatic that triggered your eating disorder in the first place? Sometimes eating disorders come to be because people desire control. They lose control in one aspect of their life, and so they use their eating disorder to control something in their lives. And in recovery, you kind of have to give up, you give up a lot of that control that your eating disorder gives you. It's a false sense of security, it's a false sense of control. Obviously, eating disorders are way more detrimental to you than this coping mechanism, than they are as a coping mechanism. And you know that because you're already in recovery. That's how you've already relapsed. So just whatever it is for you, recognize it. Perhaps it's one of those things I just said, because that way you can remind yourself of some of the information and the facts that you already knew going into recovery, why you chose recovery in the first place. This is a really good time if you're writing about your recovery process like the way I was, or if you're seeing a therapist, or if you are really close with a family member or friend who can keep you accountable. My biggest piece of advice always about everything regarding recovery is to just be super open about it. The more closed off and secretive you are, the harder it's going to be, because you're gonna feel like you have nobody who can help you and nobody to depend on. So I really, really, really highly recommend you tell somebody that you're going through recovery if you haven't already. Somebody that is in person and can keep you accountable. Having internet friends is wonderful and lovely and super helpful, and they can relate to you in a way that like probably the people around you may not necessarily be able to, but still having people around you that know will not only make it easier in these times for you to be able to physically speak it out with somebody, but also will keep you accountable because you won't feel as alone in your own personal world. All right, so recognizing why you relapsed, reminding yourself why you chose to recover in the first place, and why the reason for your relapse was something false set up by your eating disorder as its own version of self-preservation to keep itself alive within you. Remember that you're trying to kill that motherfucker, so whatever it's telling you is bullshit and lies, and you already know that. Telling the people around you, keeping yourself accountable, and then finally moving forward. So a lot of times when people relapse, as I mentioned, they think that means that that's it for their recovery. They've somehow failed and it's only going to be worse going forward, blah, 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 blah. Now, it's certainly not going to be as easy as it would have been if you had just kept going forward, but like I said, almost nobody does recovery in a straight line. So you're not in a unique situation. You're in a group of like-minded, of everybody else who's recovered, who's faltered a little bit. Recovery is not easy. No one ever said it was. And just because you may fall off the wagon or take a few steps back does not mean that you can't pick yourself up and keep trekking forward. And if that seems impossible to you, take the time, take a deep breath, gain some perspective, remember what you're fighting for, and then we can begin again. Sorry, my camera shit the bed on me for a second. I don't know if I faint. Oh yeah. Picking yourself back up again and moving forward. You're not starting recovery from the beginning. You're just starting it again. And this time, you're so much better prepared because you know that things can go wrong, and you also know that you have the capacity to right them. And that is so strong. You should recognize your ability to move on from a relapse as a strength. You should recognize your ability to recognize a relapse as a strength. Recovery does involve a lot of mental gymnastics because you're fighting against your own brain. And it's not easy, but it is 100% possible. I cannot stress that enough. And just because you have 1 setback, 2 setbacks, 5 setbacks, 10 setbacks, just because you've been trying and not succeeding at recovery for several years even, does not mean that you are somehow exempt from the possibility of achieving it. It just means that you have been fighting the fight for a long fucking time. And maybe hopefully this video is the kick in the pants you need to realize, like, you need to just let go of all of the fears, compulsions, obsessions that your eating disorder is feeding you, because they are not serving you anything. You are attempting recovery over and over and over again for a reason, because then you know in your heart of hearts that anything is worth being out of the suffering of an eating disorder. So just remembering all of these things and then moving forward. And moving forward is really, it's quite simple. You just pick yourself up, you start eating enough again, you stop working out, you let your body rest, and you simply re-enter recovery from a new perspective. A wiser perspective. I'm gonna eat the rest of this potato. I already eaten half of it. I still have all this left. Hey guys, if you enjoyed that video, didn't finish it off last night, don't really remember why I didn't, but anyway, if you enjoyed that video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, hello, my name is Rachel. This is Ladle by Ladle. That took me a second. And I make videos on body positivity, self-love, intuitive eating, and veganism, and eating disorder recovery. And I'd love to have you with me, so if you haven't already, hit subscribe. If you have questions or would like a personal recovery relationship with me, I have a number of options available for you in my Patreon program, so go check it out in the link down below. Okay, you guys, see you next time. Bye.